I'm not really the type who goes looking for trouble, you know. I'm more the kind of guy who just wants a quiet life, a decent backyard, and a place where my kid brother can breathe without the world crowding him. But a couple months ago, I found myself in the middle of something so ridiculous, so wildly petty, that even now, when I say it out loud, people think I'm exaggerating. I wish I was. It started on a Saturday morning in Silver Bend, our not too big, not too small HOA neighborhood, tucked somewhere between a sleepy suburb and a bunch of retirees who think noise after 7 p.m. is a felony. I was skimming leaves off the pool. My brother Jonah loves the water. It keeps his anxiety in check, when the peace shattered under the click-click-click of heels marching straight into my backyard like they owned the deed. That was Marla, our HOA president. Imagine a hawk with a clipboard and a haircut that looks like it's been shellacked to her skull. She strolled up wearing that smug, tight smile she uses when she's about to drop a fresh load of HOA nonsense on someone. "Good news," she chirped, waving a stack of papers like a queen blessing a peasant. "Your pool has been selected as the centerpiece for our VIP spring social next Saturday." I blinked. "My pool," I repeated, more out of confusion than anything. "Yes," she said, as if I were slow. "Per the new property utilization mandate, subsection 4, premium amenities, may be assigned to community events at the discretion of the board." She tapped her clipboard like it was the Constitution. Instead of some document she probably typed at 2 in the morning while fueled by spite and Pinterest boards. Jonah shrank behind me, clutching his sketchbook. He hates conflict, and Marla radiates conflict the way microwaves radiate. "Whatever microwaves radiate." "Marla," I said, pointing at the massive private property. No trespassing sign Jonah had decorated with little flowers. "You do see this, right?" She did that little sniff she does when she's about to decide reality doesn't apply to her. "Cute. But this is for the good of the community, Luke. Influencers will be attending. You wouldn't want to make the neighborhood look bad, would you?" There it was, the HOA classic weaponized shame. When I told her she wasn't hosting a party in my backyard, she stared at me like I'd kicked her poodle. "You'll regret this," she hissed, heels stabbing the patio as she spun and stormed off. That should have been the end of it. But with Marla, the end is never the end. It's just intermission. 3 days later, Jonah found a notice taped to our front door, taped like an eviction or a health code violation. It was titled Official Reservation Confirmation, which would have been funny if Jonah's hands hadn't been shaking as he brought it inside. According to her paperwork, the HOA had reserved our pool for 4 hours, demanded access to our house for restroom use, and warned of significant compliance fines for interference. I felt something hot and sharp twist in my chest. Not for me, for Jonah. This house, this yard, that pool. This is the one place he feels safe. And this woman was turning it into her personal event venue. I called the management company that technically oversees our HOA cluster. But the woman on the phone told me, in the tone of someone bored out of their mind, that boards have wide latitude in interpreting bylaws. She suggested I attend the next HOA meeting, 3 weeks away. The party was in 5 days. Real helpful. But the real turning point came from my neighbor Rudy, a retired pipe fitter who loves drama like other retirees love bingo. He called me after his morning lap around the community. "Saw Marla at the clubhouse," he said. "She's bragging about non-refundable deposits and dignitaries flying in. Says the venue is already paid for." Venue. She called my backyard a venue, and that word, non-refundable, stuck with me. Later, Jonah pulled up a flyer she'd posted at the entrance. Grand VIP Social, hosted at Silver Bend's premier aquatic oasis. And there was my pool, photoshopped with palm trees we definitely don't own. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I'm not a fighter by nature, but when you push a man who's been trying to mind his business, and you threaten the one person he'd burn the world down to protect, well, you force him to think differently. So that night, after Jonah went to bed, I pulled out the deed to my property and the HOA's actual bylaws. The real ones, not the bedtime stories Marla writes for herself. I read every line and I realized something beautiful. She had no right, none, zero, zip, which led me to what I can only describe as the most satisfying idea I've ever had. If she wanted my pool so badly, fine. Let her have it, just without the pool part. I went to the shed, dusted off my submersible pump, and smiled. This was going to be fun in a quiet, petty, deeply lawful kind of way. So Saturday morning rolls around, the day of Marla's grand VIP spectacle, and I'm up before the sun with a cup of coffee and the kind of calm you only get right before you do something mildly evil but perfectly legal. I typed up a letter for her and the board, real polite, real formal, saying the pool was undergoing urgent owner-initiated maintenance until further notice. Then, like fate placing the perfect delivery mule, I saw Janice, Marla's second-in-command and possibly the only person capable of frowning while walking a poodle, passing by. I handed her the letter. Mind giving this to Marla? HOA business? She looked at me like I'd offered her a dead squirrel, but she took it, which was all I needed. Then it was showtime. I rolled the pump to the deep end, hooked up the hose, ran it legally toward the storm drain, and flipped the switch. The water started rushing out in a thick, steady stream, thousands of gallons of freedom pouring away, and the sound of it was, man, it was glorious, like the universe was applauding. By the time Jonah woke up, the waterline had dropped enough that you could see the mosaic tiles we laid down last summer. He blinked at the pool, then at me, and this huge grin stretched across his face. You're actually doing it, he said. Urgent maintenance, I replied, sipping my coffee. Can't risk unsafe conditions for Marla's VIPs. Rudy wandered over not long after, holding a donut box like an offering. Son, he said, surveying the draining pool, this is the kind of petty that gets you promoted in heaven. I swear Max, his terrier, nodded in agreement. But the real magic happened around 9:45, when I heard tires screech and looked up to see Marla's SUV jerking to a stop in front of my house, like it was trying not to be complicit in whatever came next. She practically exploded out of the driver's seat, Janice scrambling behind. She stormed down my driveway, heels stabbing the concrete. Luke, what is the meaning of this? Her voice cracked like she'd just walked in on a crime scene. The setup crew is arriving any minute. I stood up slow, calm as a summer lake. Morning, Marla, lovely day. Stop with the niceties. She snapped. You are deliberately sabotaging an HOA-sanctioned event. This is illegal. That's a big word, I told her. But this is my pool, my yard, my property, and I'm maintaining it. As the owner, she sputtered, the mandate supersedes your deed. I held up the deed like a shield forged by common sense itself. Actually, it doesn't. She went pale, then red. Then this odd mottled combination I'd only ever seen on malfunctioning printers. But when I mentioned the words non-refundable tickets, her eyes widened in a way that told me I'd hit the real nerve. Janice even gasped. I didn't know she had lungs. Marla tried to regain footing, but it was like watching someone try to climb a greased hill. This isn't over, she hissed, pointing a shaking finger at me like she was casting a curse. There are fines for this, consequences. Then I guess, I said, you'll have a very concise police report to file. She didn't appreciate the joke. She left in a cloud of dust and perfume, and for the next few hours, Jonah and I sat outside watching the water drain the last of itself away. By 1 p.m., the pool looked like an empty blue canyon. I set up a giant sign reading, Pool Closed, Urgent Owner Repairs, No Trespassing, and I made sure it faced the gate like a polite middle finger. Then the clock struck 1:55. That's when the parade arrived. Luxury SUVs, polished sedans, people dressed like they were attending a soft launch for a skincare line. One woman wore a hat so wide it could have picked up satellite channels. They followed Marla toward my gate in this neat little procession, until they saw the sign, the empty pool, the hoses, my lawn chair, and Marla's face. Oh man, it was like someone unplugged her from the wall. Marla, the woman in the giant hat asked, is this performance art? A man beside her muttered, we paid $100 for this. I shouldn't have laughed, but I did, quietly, into my cup. Marla whipped around and shrieked my name like I'd just murdered her reputation, which, in fairness, I guess I kind of had. She jabbed her phone in the air. I'm calling the police. This is vandalism. He destroyed HOA property. She actually dialed 911. That's when everything went from sitcom to crime documentary. 2 cruisers pulled up within minutes, lights flashing. Neighbors peeking. Influencers recording. Rudy leaning on his mailbox like he'd bought front row seats. Officer Miller, a tall guy with the aura of someone who's done this dance 100 times, listened to her frantic explanation, then turned to me. "Sir, is any of this true?" "Yes," I said calmly, handing him the deed. "Except the parts she made up." He looked at the deed, looked at the empty pool, looked at Marla, then said the most beautiful words I've ever heard from an officer. "Ma'am, this is private property. You can't claim vandalism for something the homeowner did to his own pool." She froze, like a computer that needed a hard restart. Then Miller added, "And calling 911 for a civil dispute is a misuse of emergency services." The lawyer VIP stepped forward, waving his ticket in the air. "She charged us for this. If she didn't have permission to use this property, that's fraudulent." You could practically hear Marla's brain melting. The crowd murmured. The influencers filmed. Jonah peeked through the window with wide eyes. Even Max the Terrier contributed by lifting his leg on Marla's expensive marigolds. By the time the officers wrapped up, Marla was standing alone, her clipboard on the ground, her social empire crumbling in real time. She didn't yell anymore. She didn't threaten. She just picked up her clipboard, walked to her car, and drove off without a word. And I swear, the street got quieter the second she left. The fallout was quick. The video went viral. The HOA meeting was a disaster for her. She resigned. Janice bailed. A new board stepped in. Jonah went back to drawing by the pool. The neighborhood relaxed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like our home was actually ours again. You know, people always ask how far someone will go to defend the things that matter. And I guess the answer is far enough. Far enough to stand your ground. Far enough to drain a pool. Far enough to remind a bully that a clipboard isn't a crown. But here's the real question I want to throw to you. Because this story always gets people fired up. Who was really in the wrong here? Was draining the pool petty? Or was it justice? And would you have gone even further if you were in my shoes? Tell me what you think down below. Because trust me, this one always starts a debate.